had relatively high agricultural growth. It's the non-agricultural sector that kind of failed. But I think, thinking of the budget, I'd rather think that the central government takes the lead in liberalizing agricultural trade, so that we don't have this ad hoc system of 2 months export, 3 months ban, 20% duty, 0 duty, this flip-flop that goes on right through the year, because that is actually the worst disincentive to the farmers and the producers, because you can never be sure that what is going to be the policy 2 weeks, 2 months down the road. Right? So I think the first thing, rather than a fiscal incentive, I'd like a policy consistency, and particularly regarding agriculture, since we are a net agricultural exporter, we should really think of liberalizing imports and not do this ad hoc. And secondly, again, not so much incentives in terms of tax ups, but in terms of building the supply chain that deal with the bottlenecks that's affecting supply chain. For instance, if we can figure out a way to stabilize electricity, a lot of the cold storage will start functioning. No? So the cold storage are not functioning, or the investment is not coming into cold storage, either because the energy is very expensive if they have to put up their own in-house electricity generation units, or they can't get it if they set it up, because the state electricity boards cannot provide them stable electricity. So if the electricity can be sorted, the supply chain will greatly improve. Similarly, the roads. If the roads can be sorted, the supply chain will improve. Thirdly, the issue of trade barriers between districts because of APMC in some states, and across states. Like every day in the morning we see trucks standing outside of Delhi. So if we deregulate that and allow the free flow, not so much to help agriculture, but the agriculture would perhaps be the biggest beneficiary, because agriculture has this perishable aspect to it, unlike clothes or computers. So if they can move faster, travel across the districts and across state boundaries that much easier, and which I think the government can spell out in the budget, that they would remove these entry barriers that exist either between districts because of APMC or across states, and encourage free flow of agricultural goods, so that the price variation that exists between the farmer's end, where the price might be 5 rupees, whereas the consumer end in the city, the price is 50 rupees. Who is benefiting? There's a particular group of people who are benefiting. Now that group is a very small minority in terms of electoral population. So the politicians should see the benefit, that the farmers, the producers will benefit if the supply chain can be collapsed and made more efficient. But it will not happen if we have a separate policy for supply chain where we say there's a capital subsidy. It will happen automatically if we can deal with issues of electricity and infrastructure, which we all know we lack. I think that would be the single biggest contribution to the farm sector. I went to some of the poorest villages where, because electricity has become relatively available, I'm seeing refrigerator for the first time in my life in some of the poorest tribal villages in India. Right? So that's going to improve or reduce wastage. So if that can be scaled up so that there is a formal storage supply, and if the transaction is reduced by allowing free flow across districts and across states, then I think the inflation aspect of the food inflation, which we all have been concerned over the last few years, would greatly be dampened. And coupled with a stable import-export policy, would actually stabilize prices and incentivize farmers to do their maximum. If they do it, it will really be tamed in the next 2-3 months. And this will be very much necessary this year if you think that the predictions about low monsoon, less than average monsoon that is being predicted now, actually happens. That will become, because if the production is hampered because of monsoon or less monsoon, less rainfall, then the prices are going to spike again. So this is the best time, because the new government has all the goodwill in its favor. There's a huge amount of expectation. If they do this basic reform, which will not be a drain on the fiscal side at all, because we don't want the fiscal deficit to keep growing through handouts and subsidies, just procedural aspects of liberalizing the international trade in agriculture so that things can come in, and things will come in when the prices spike. But it will not allow the spike to happen, because it's coming in on a continuous basis. So any marginal increase in a domestic price will allow imports to come in, and any marginal decrease in domestic price will allow the exports to go in. So the prices will be stable. And that is the best incentive we can give to farmers, that they don't have to bother about which crops to plant 2 months or 3 months down the road because of price, because they're never sure that what would be the price.
Right.
I think it's very possible, particularly for this government at this point in time. I think more than farm loan waiver, I would like the UPA government or NDA government now to utilize the huge amount of food grain stock to dampen the spike that will happen if an El-Nino really strikes, and that will be good for the farmers and good for the consumers, and fiscally extremely beneficial. Most of the time, it is the vested interests who benefit from this kind of scarcity situation, that who also happen to patronize a lot of local politicians and establishments, and they reap the benefit, which is why a new government with a fresh mandate can really break through, because the vested interests obviously did not support this government in the past, right? So this government has a very big opportunity to release in a planned, in a step-by-step predictable manner, reduce the 90 or 100 million ton of food grain that is now in the FCI holdings, because the government FCI has become the largest holder in the country. The state cannot pick it up. One, the transport logistics is absent, and two, because of the leakage in the PDS, it's a loss on the state if they pick up more PDS, more food grain from FCI. So if the government can release when the prices are rising, as it will if El-Nino strikes, this is the best opportunity to dampen the prices by releasing the food grain, optimize your food grain holding, as well as benefit the farmers and the poor and the consumers by not allowing the price to spike. But this has to be augmented with the trade. Otherwise, it will again get captured by another set of vested interests who would like to regulate or have this regulation in their control, that they would decide when to open and when to shut the tap. We have to break that linkage. In developed countries, this is the most astonishing thing I learned, that in most developed countries, food prices firstly are a very small percentage of their consumption basket, just about 5-10%. Secondly, they hardly ever spike in the manner that they do here. Like onion prices 5 rupees today and 50 rupees tomorrow, hardly any developed country witness that. That is because the supply chain is efficient and the trade is literally free. And in many sectors. Of course, the developed countries also have their own subsidies and the trade barriers in case of sugar or cotton or things of that kind. But by and large, it's much more open. It will not spike. That's the point we must recognize, that the poor are hurt when it spikes in an unpredictable manner. The prices spike in an unpredictable manner. If we can stabilize the prices, poor would know what would the price tomorrow, and the farmers would accordingly plant because they know what is likely to be the price tomorrow. Today, he thinks the price is 50 and plants, then the price is down to 5. He's at a great loss. In fact, in parts of India, we have the situation where farmers don't even want to pick up the fruits and vegetables. I've seen farmers who are letting cauliflower rot on the field because the cauliflower is selling at 2 rupees. So if we can get the supply chain going by getting the infrastructure problem resolved to an extent, and reduce the spiking by opening up, liberalizing the domestic trade within and across states and international trade, then the prices will not spike. In fact, that I believe would be the best protection against the El-Nino if it really happens this year. Nationally, we should easily be able to cross 5-6% annually, easily. And one of the reasons for that would be, apart from the things that I mentioned, is to resolve the land capitalization, so that the most efficient farmers can expand easily and people who want to invest in agriculture can come in that much more easily. Agriculture can easily do much better because it is starting from such a low base. India is a large producer in most commodities, but our productivity is among the poorest. And that is today's technology. So we are not expecting or asking any radical improvement in technology to become the benefits. These are already there with us. We have to create the environment so that farmers can leverage those benefits to the maximum extent possible. instead of thinking about all these sudden and ad hoc decisions that make it so unpredictable an economic environment to take a decision. I think 5-6% is even more perhaps. You know, Gujarat claims doing a 10% agricultural growth. That at a national level might be too far-fetched to expect in the short term, but 5-6% as a stable, steady growth, irrespective of what the climate is, I think is very much possible. Irrespective of what the war, whether it's a drought year or a flood year, it's very much possible.